All right, welcome to another episode of the Financial MD Show. We're back and ready to talk about what's relevant today in finances for young physicians. And sometimes there's very specific things that apply to you, and sometimes there are things that just apply to everybody. Like, for example, today's topic of buying a car is something that applies to everybody. Now, certainly when you get out of residency, that's when most doctors are definitely looking to buy a car. I don't know about you, Trevor, but that was what was that like? Was that your new car purchase when you got out of residency or fellowship, or what was the?
No, my goal was to pay off my loans. I was pretty aggressive on paying off my loans. I kept the same car I had in residency until it was totaled last year.
Okay.
Had a nice trip to Florida, flew back, snowstorm, driving home from the Detroit airport. And
Mm,
there was a 19-year-old kid and a brand new 2021 Chevy Blazer, bright orange, just ripping down the right lane, going
nice.
about 80. Everyone else is going like 60-ish or so. Really heavy
Yeah.
snow conditions. People from Michigan would know.
Yeah.
And he just started spinning around in front of everybody. He hit an off-duty police officer first,
Okay. Good
and
start.
then two other cars, including my own. And so, so that car was toast. Hit the
How old was
middle.
he?
I didn't get his, exact age, but he looked like he was probably 19. I mean, he
Yeah.
looked younger than 20.
Yeah.
It's possible that he was a little older than that, but yeah, pretty crazy. So I kept my same car. I just was like, you know what? I like this car. It's a solid car. I got a wicked deal on it
Mm-hmm.
in residency. Didn't really have many repairs.
Mm-hmm.
So I waited, but then I've just kind of been like bouncing around because that was like still during COVID, a
Yeah.
year ago. That was 2021. So cars were like crazy. So I just bought the cheapest used car I could find with good gas mileage. And I've been driving a 2005 Toyota Prius for the last year.
Mm-hmm.
The air conditioning doesn't work.
You're starting to feel
I
that now,
ended,
aren't you?
oh my gosh. It's it's I hate to admit how much it drives me crazy not to have air conditioning, but when it's like, it's humid in Michigan.
Oh yeah.
So the heat's one thing, but humid, it's
I know.
brutal.
Yeah.
So it's windows down, it's loud. I replaced the rear shocks. I've just been putting a lot of money into it. I'm like, this is crazy. So yeah, what prompted this pod here, right, was
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna buy a car. And the funny thing about people, even if they have a financial advisor, is they'll usually buy a house or a car and they'll be like, hey, I just wanted to give you a call, just a heads up, financial advisor. I just bought $80,000 Audi or something like that. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
cool. Is that part of our plan that we put together?
Oh
You
my
and
gosh, dude, that is the
yeah.
same
So
conversation I've had. I think, folks, what you're hearing is Trevor's been with us long enough to know what the quick and the dirty side of financial planning that nobody tells you. That I've gotten to the point where I'll put it in writing with clients before, like, please let us know of any upcoming financial changes or large purchases or like any of that kind of stuff. And
mhm,
I think sometimes they don't think about it, but I know there's some times where they didn't want to tell me,
mhm.
you know.
It's really funny. It's definitely financial advisors are to some degree. They're like accountability for our financial decisions. Like
Well, for
if you
sure.
eat terrible and you start getting a belly and you still go to the gym and you've got a trainer, he's going to be like, hey, we've been working at this. Like, what's going on? Like,
Hmm.
are we achieving your goals? We can adjust them, but this is what we
Yeah.
said we were going to do. So what's the plan here? It's incredibly valuable to have that person to be able to check in
Yeah, not that it's
with.
not flexible, but I've always said half the value of a financial planner when I talk to people about how much it costs, monthly to work with Financial MD or any of that kind of thing. They always think, well, what's the value that I'm getting? Are they going to save me money? Are they
Hmm.
going to make me more money because I work with a
Hmm.
financial planner? Well, probably, but it's going to be intangible things that we can't track because half the value of working with a financial planner is the accountability. And we almost call it a financial coach so people can get that
Yeah,
concept a little better.
totally.
I'm going to tell you to do stuff. I'm going to expect you to do it. And when you don't, I need to hear about it, or that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
yeah, you're totally right. And I hope everybody listening to this, whenever the point is you work with a financial planner, if you're disciplined enough to do it yourself, great, but that's not the majority. As the White Coat Investor says, that's 5 to maybe 10% of docs are legitimate do-it-yourselfers and should be. The rest need to get some help, and yeah, you need that accountability. Because I tell people this isn't information that's proprietary to me. I'm not some brilliant storehouse of knowledge that nobody else has. I have a lot of knowledge, but it's not stuff you can't just Google either. So why do you need a financial planner? So there you go. That's my rant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I totally agree. Yeah, so that's why I reached out. I was curious, like, what are your thoughts? What do you talk to about clients with cars? Because I'm about to buy a new car. I want to replace one I have. Well, not. I'm gonna still gonna keep it around as a backup because I basically repaired everything on it that needs to be repaired.
Yeah.
It's got 200,000 plus miles on it.
Yeah.
Like it's fully depreciated. It's perfect. It's a great backup car to just keep around. Barely cost me anything on insurance. It's sweet, and my family can use it. Siblings, parents, whatever, running to the airport. It gets great gas mileage. So I'm like, okay, I'll just keep it around. It's not worth trading in or even selling, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, but I want to upgrade something that I can kind of be a nice commuter car that's more comfortable and just something nicer. Like I really focus so much on my loans that I'm like, when am I going to ever buy something like that I like?
Yeah.
Like just for me to enjoy, because like that's supposedly part of the reason we make money, but I'm kind of bad about spending money on things I can like just use that don't have an explicit investment purpose, growth plan. Yeah, so I could just drive this thing forever into the ground and save some money here and there, but I really would like to do something, to get something nice that I enjoy that's just fun and comfortable and
Yeah.
easier on my back and stuff. And I'm not that old, but I'm getting old enough that I appreciate a comfortable seat if I'm driving a lot,
Yeah. So are you at
So
like back in the day, are you at like the Lincoln level, like Cadillac, like you want that nice smooth ride?
yeah. So I've been prioritizing like a smooth ride
Yeah.
and comfortable seat, like good back support.
Yeah.
Like the Prius that I have doesn't even adjust up and down. It only adjusts back and forth.
Mm.
So I hadn't been in a car like that in a while when I bought this one.
You're like,
So you just
wow.
end up at the same height, no matter where you're at.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's so
it's just tough. Like, yeah.
it's we've always been an old soul. So I think that's
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah. No, the body catches up, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. And when I called you, I was just like, let's make sure this is kind of what I have in mind. I'm thinking about a car payment, in the range of 500 to 800 or something. Get something that's 60 to 70 something month amortization
Uh-huh.
lease period,
Okay.
and that'll get me in the range of 700 to 850 or so at
Yeah.
the going rates for insurance, or sorry, for the loan. The interest rates are like 3.5%, 4%, maybe higher depending on your bank and all that. But I'm getting quoted like around there. Good credit is like 730 plus, and I'm set on that.
Hmm.
So none of this obviously is bragging. I don't know. I doubt that sounds like bragging to say my credit score is over 730, but I just want to be clear. I don't really care. I'm not trying to sound like fancy or cool or anything. I'm just saying, here's my example. I'm
Yep.
4 months out of residency. I paid off one of my major loans. I want to drive something a little bit nicer and just enjoy that. I'm coming from the flip side of like, I'm having a hard time letting myself spend a little bit of money. That's what I'm finding, because I've been so like nose down, pay off as much as possible of my debt. And now I'm like, oh, is it okay if I like don't buy a Toyota, And it's kind of almost like a psychological process to walk through, like, oh, but this costs a little bit more. And then I look at the miles per gallon for luxury cars. They're not as good as like a Toyota hybrid or
Yeah.
like a Lexus hybrid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's going to cost this much per year in gas. And if gas doubles in price, it'll be even more proportionally. So, but at the same time, I'm like, man, what am I making? What am I working hard for and making money for? Like if I'm not going to spend it sometimes on something that I enjoy, it's like, man, what's the point?
Well, my normal
So
answer is you're making more money to buy more Bitcoin, but that's
yeah,
over
right. No, that's my normal answer too.
there.
And I do love that perspective, but you know what? Bitcoin goes down and up, right? So I think I've got a pretty rational, regular plan
Yep.
on my investing, and I've got that portion of my income set aside. So it's like, well, I can do that. I don't really want to buy a home, and investment properties, that's investments, all that stuff. I keep thinking, oh, I could do more investments. Like, well, I'm already doing investments.
Yeah.
I'm already being responsible.
Hmm.
So, anyways, I don't want to be too redundant, but that's kind of been the process. I found a car I like, and now I'm just going through I know the exact payments it's going to cost. I just got quotes on the insurance, and I compared a Toyota hybrid car to this other kind of more like luxury car.
Hmm.
It's still not it's still not German. It's still one of the lower cost ones, but it's like the Hyundai sub brand Genesis. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, these are cool. I kind of like the look of them. They're a little more comfortable, but they're not like the cost of a Mercedes E-Class or
Yeah.
a BMW 5 Series or something like that. So, and the maintenance won't be quite as expensive. So I'm still being like very financial about it, even though I'm
Yeah.
trying to make more of a fun decision.
So I mean, we're going to talk about a couple different things here in terms of
Yeah.
what's normal advice for buying a car, and then what's it like these days, and how do we have to tweak that a little bit. So normally when we're looking at car, I mean, general rule of thumb that I would say to anybody that can, and I would say, this is one of those Dave Ramsey would probably agree with, don't buy a brand new car. I think people know that in general, but these days that may have changed and be a little bit different. Because the used car market is so tight and unprecedented and just availability and all those things, we may have to relook at some of those things. General rule of advice, buy a 2 or 3-year-old car, pay cash for it, but we're still in a fairly low interest rate environment. Good 2 or 3-year-old cars are nearly as much as a brand new car, so we're getting in one of those weird times where conventional wisdom doesn't necessarily apply as much. Back in 2004, the government came out with this cash for clunkers deal. Like they were short on, I can't remember what it was. If people were getting, I don't know, if scrap metal, there was some issues there. There was just, I don't remember what it was, but there was maybe it was to help the car industry or something like that. But they did this cash for clunkers where the government was giving like a certain amount for no matter what shape your car was in, you were getting money for these used cars. And so that bumped up the used car price quite a bit. And I ended up buying a brand new car for the first time because for like, a few thousand more,
Yep.
I got the full warranty and a brand new car and like all that kind of stuff. It was like, that kind of made sense.
Yep.
But we're kind of in another time, different reasons, but similar outcome, and things kind of have to go out the window. Yesterday, Trevor and I talked a little bit about how much of so let's say you're not paying cash, how much of your budget should be going towards this. So he and I talked about student loans. We talked about other outstanding debt, if any, other payments. And one of the big things that I talk to any resident, any physician that I'm doing a budget with is what is the percentage that should be going to any debt, car payment included. So all told, generally 45% is what you want to be allotted, no more than that. I'm not saying that's your goal. You want to get up to that point, but that's kind of the limit where you set yourself. 45% for any debt, that's of your gross income. 25% of that is usually housing payment. Again, these are maximums recommended. So that being the case, we talked through some of that, but that's still, I think the environment is still the same for something like that today. So walk us through, Trevor, what was the process like these days for buying a car?
Yeah. So what I've learned is it's definitely different than last time I was looking. I looked back in 2014 when I was switching out of a car that was just costing too much to repair, and then had just one car between then and now until last year. It's interesting. So I went over and looked at a Kia Telluride. I'll just give a couple specific examples. And
That's a crossover or
that's a full-on SUV.
SUV, okay.
It has a third row, bucket seats in the middle, really easy to get in and out of. Good like family car, but 4-door SUV. So great car, really highly rated, one of the highest rated on Consumer Reports. I'm really into Consumer Reports. It's great to read about like all the detailed testing they do.
Does Kia still have good warranties
Awesome
too?
car. Yeah, they have great. Really, honestly, I'm not seeing bad warranties really anywhere in the Toyota, Hyundai, Honda range. Honestly, it's like the American automakers that have kind of like the worst ones. Like, I remember when I was looking at Ford 5 years ago, I haven't even looked at them this time, but it was like 3-year, 36,000 mile engine drivetrain.
Really?
And Hyundai is 100,000 10-year. They're kind of known for being one of the higher end ones. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking for warranties, like I don't know what American cars have like good warranties, but I can tell you the other Toyota, Hyundai, Kia, they're all pretty good. I think Kia's might be a little less, but regardless, checking out the Telluride, really highly rated objectively, by that source. And it was on the lot of $61,000, and the MSRP, meaning like the price that it's assigned like at the factory when they make it, was $51,000. So it's currently available, and it's $10,000 more than it should be new. So I was just chatting to the guy about it, the salesman.
Mhm.
And I came back a week later because they wouldn't really budge on price. They're like, "Oh, we paid 6,000 over asking from another dealership to bring it here to sell." I'm like, "Okay, all right, whatever." So I come back a week later and I'm like, "Hey, you told me the car would be off the lot in a matter of days. I
Yeah.
see it's still there.
Yeah.
You willing to come down on the price?" And they're like, "Nope." And I was like, "No problem, not interested." But I picked their brains a little bit more. I was like, "It's so interesting. Obviously, this is kind of new and yada yada. It's good and bad for you because you have less volume, but you have to sell all these cars and then you just basically have to charge more if you want to make the same." Obviously, most of the dealerships make their money on repairs, not on selling cars, but now they can do a bit of both, but it's low volume. He said if I buy a new one and I'm willing to wait 10 12 months is the lead time. If I'm
Yeah.
willing to wait, then I just pay MSRP and I can do a refundable deposit. So I think part of the reason the cars are kind of gone is because people have been doing that. Like a year ago, they would buy, they put 500 down, fully refundable.
Yep.
And then when the car would arrive, they could just buy it and they don't have to buy it. They're not obligated, fully refundable. But if the market is still tight, they can buy it and just flip it. They can sell it immediately for more. There's got to be people out there that are speculating on these cars. There's no penalty for not taking delivery when it arrives. So you've got a little bit of cash here and there. There's got to be people that are probably making decent money on that. I saw there was an article about a guy who's been doing this with Teslas. He's bought like 4 or 5 in the last year
Oh
and
my
flipped them
gosh.
for 7,000 a piece on average. You know, he's doing no work other than putting $100 down and then financing a vehicle and selling it
Yeah.
immediately, and he's making $7,000 a quarter doing that. You know, that's no work, not no work, but it's low work and it's a business. You know, he's looked at all the details. But anyway, so there are some ways to get them for cheaper as long as you're super patient and you don't have an immediate need. So if anyone's looking at cars and they're like, I want to wait a year, I mean, go look at cars now,
Yeah.
decide, put down 100, 200, 500, or whatever it is, fully refundable. For any physician, healthcare workers listening, that's a totally reasonable amount of your paycheck. If you're even thinking about a car a year from now, you should easily have that you can put down. And then you save, you know, what is that, like about 20%, a little bit less on that. If you're going from 60 grand to 50 grand,
Yeah.
that's an amazing return on your money. You're making 10 grand over a year essentially versus buying it.
Just for waiting. Right.
So just for waiting. So it's really interesting. You can buy used, but it ends up being almost the same price as the list price if it's a year old, 2
Right.
years old. Some of them sell for more even than a new car because of immediate availability. It's variable, depends on the brand, depends on your area. But if you go on Carvana, Car Gurus, these apps searching around for cars, you'll see. I mean, they really just, you just can't find them. They're super hard to find.
Right.
If you want a hybrid, it's like impossible. Yeah. So that's the gist of kind of the market. If you're looking for what everyone else is looking for, when everyone else is looking for it,
Right.
that's going to be the hard thing to find. So right now, that's high gas mileage sedans and SUVs. So hybrids are really tough to come by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as gas prices have gone up, have you noticed more SUVs, full-size trucks available, that kind of thing, or not really?
Totally. You can go buy whatever Toyota 4Runner you want from any Toyota dealership right now.
Okay.
So you can get any color, any version, interior, exterior, different technology packages. Yep. I mean, and trucks are still pretty popular, so they're not necessarily
Yeah.
as easy as like SUVs, I think, because
Okay.
there's just such a big market for trucks. But
They're
yeah,
all-
you can find like a Toyota Tacoma in a lot of different colors without driving more than 30, 40 minutes away. Because their gas mileage is like 18, 18, 22 or something like that.
For what?
So anything in that like teen range,
Yeah.
it seems like it's pretty darn easy to find them.
Yeah. I know thought crossed my mind to sell my Suburban, a few months ago, but then as gas prices have gone up, that's not so appealing anymore. What about financing? What's the process? Financing, what are options like out there? What is interest like out there?
Yeah, it's not. I thought it was going to be higher. I was kind of nervous. I thought I'd walk in, learn, find a car I liked, and then it would match sort of the housing market. I was fearing 5-6% rates.
Right.
Just thinking, man, I'm going to need to buy a less car. But it's looking like here's certainly the trick. The lower you can go on the amount of months you're financing for, the lower the rate, dramatically lower. So you can I was looking briefly at like a Mercedes, just mostly out of curiosity. Like E350 is like a really nice car.
Okay.
Everybody likes them.
Yeah.
Pretty reliable for a Mercedes.
Sure.
It's kind of the second nicest luxury sedan below an S-Class. Those are like 120K plus S-Class. These are like 70 to 80 or so. You get a used one in the 60s. So like Mercedes on the 18, 19, 20, car years, they'll go down to 1.99%, and those are certified pre-owned. So you're getting basically slightly older car, all the warranties of a new car. They check the tires, they do all the stuff, they replace them if they have to.
Yep.
And you get 2% financing. Well, that's at 36 months. So your payments are like $1,500, a month. It's like a student loan payment for a lot of people.
Yep.
So for a rapidly depreciating asset,
Okay.
maybe they haven't been depreciating much over the last year and a half, but
Mhm.
I don't think anyone thinks that that'll be the case over the long term.
No.
So most people finance for that reason, because they don't want a lot of their cash flow each month to go into a rapidly depreciating asset, even if you're going to get all the way down to 2%. So like if I get a 3.5%, 4% loan on a $45,000, $50,000 car,
Yeah.
I'll end up paying around $5 to $7,000, really more like $5,500
Yeah.
in interest over a period of 60, 70 months or so.
Okay.
It's not like, it's a chunk of interest when you think about it. It's 10% more in final cost, but it's not terrible.
Yeah.
It's worth it to not be paying $1,500 a month, even if I saved $3,000 over the life of the payments. At least to me, that's where it gets like just a personal decision of what do you want to look like. But
and relative to your cash flow and
that's
budget
like the
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm personally leaning towards trying to get something in like the $700 something range, 4% interest. A couple of years ago, that would have been 2% probably, which is nice, but it's totally doable. And yeah, I'll probably go with that. It gives me some space. I could do it shorter and ratchet it up to 1,000 a month and probably get down to like 3% or something.
Yeah.
I'm just glad it's not 6%, like the housing market.
Is that through the dealership, or is that a bank, credit union?
Really either. So my experience with the dealership is that they're like, hey, we can just throw this out to the local credit unions. They get the best rates. We're preferred lenders. It's the same process going through them as it is going through the bank. They kind of do it for you. That's what I found. You can kind of pick your poison. Some of them, like I'm looking at other types of loans, like for business ventures.
Yep.
And you don't want to do a bunch of hard pulls on your credit right when you're applying for other things at the same time.
Right.
Unless you've got great credit, maybe it's okay. But it's ideal not to.
You're awesome.
Yeah. So I'm not doing a shotgun, approach. I talked to one lender that was like, oh, we'll send it up to 72 loan companies and get quotes from all of them. They say it's a soft pull.
Yeah.
But I've had soft pulls that are actually hard pulls before. And so I never really believe anybody. Tell me if you've had a different experience, but I've had people say that enough times where I've ended up with a hard pull that affects my credit. Where I'm just like, I don't need 72 quotes. I need I need like one that I'm okay with. Sure, it's great to shop it around and check and maybe get a 0.25%, 0.5%. But on $50,000, 0.5%, yeah, you're going to save a little.
Especially on 4%.
Maybe like 5.
If it's 4%, how much could the spread or the range actually be?
It's not going to be big. There's not a big difference. How much, for $500, you want to spend, an extra week looking at cars? That's a lot of your time driving to dealerships, dealing with all that. So you guys have to remember just your time is valuable as well.
Yeah.
So I've gone with a simple approach on that, and I was already pretty happy with those rates. So I think I'm pretty close to pulling the trigger on one of these and getting back to the life of driving a car with air conditioning.
Oh man,
sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
It's gonna be great, and I've saved a ton of money over the last year driving this kind of POS, but also great gas mileage car.
Yep.
So if you sacrifice for a while, eventually, it's okay to let yourself go ahead and spend a little bit of money and enjoy your earnings.
Yep.
So I'll report back and let you know if I'm actually able to do that. But that's what I'm going to try to do, is actually enjoy some of my earnings.
Good.
Hopefully I won't regret it. I don't think I will, but
no, you got a good job. You got a good, your life is finally stable again after Jamaica, Nebraska.
Traveling. Yeah. Lots of great experiences in one spot where it wasn't even worth having a nice car then.
No.
And now I'll be using it. I think I'll drive about 20,000 miles a year or so with the new job, because it's kind of jumping around to different offices. So this is a good time to be doing what I'm doing. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Like it. Okay, so you'll find out, you said September-ish, kind of what they're thinking, or before then on the car?
For which portion?
When the car should be in by?
Oh yeah, so I'm actually going to buy a used car. I'm going to buy a 2021 used car that's pretty hard to find, and if I order it new, they don't have any lead time on it.
Okay.
And you can't order the car that I want. You cannot order currently for next year even, because they haven't finalized the model design. So I'm like, okay, cool. I don't need a brand new car.
Yeah.
And I would be happy with a 2019 or 2020. They just happen to have a 2021.
Okay.
It's a very limited selection, so you just kind of get what they got. And I looked online, couldn't find any online, so there you go.
Okay. Gosh, it must have been, I think I was doing a review with a client who's similar thing. They're like waiting for a text from the car dealer to tell them when the car is in or on its way or something like that. And that's the,
Yep, they ordered ahead and then they pay in full when it arrives.
okay.
Yeah. The typically a pre-approval letter, when you apply for a loan, you can get a pre-approval letter, then you can just go around and show them the piece of paper,
Yeah.
and then you're good to go. They'll
Like
kind of take care
shopping
of the
for a
rest.
house.
Yeah, like shopping for a house, but they typically only last like 60 days.
Okay.
And so you potentially have to apply for the loan twice, like when you first go looking, and then if they don't have it and you order a year out, you would have to apply again before they get it in.
Yeah, that's fair.
Kind of a weird thing. Told me that, yeah, that can't happen. Nobody, it's all new territory to be able to, or to have to order that far. But
Yep.
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Okay. Well, super. Any other tips or tricks for our young docs buying a car? Anything else that you feel like, hey, here's one or two things you should know or just keep in mind are super important?
Yeah, my wrap on the summary would be like use reliable objective sources to pick a reliable car. So
Okay.
Consumer Reports is pretty solid.
Mhm.
Kelley Blue Book has just user reviews of people posting like, this car sucks. I had to do this and that. And you can see if there's a trend of those.
Uh-huh.
But Consumer Reports is great. They do one big annual issue every year that just came out. And that goes through really almost all the cars commonly on the road in the US. So I use that as a final reference of, even certain model years of a car, even if you got a Toyota Corolla or something, incredibly reliable.
Yep.
There'll typically be one kind of weak year where they were tweaking. And generally the best cars are like 3 years after a new model year because they kind of work through some of the kinks the first year or two.
Yeah. For
You don't often want to buy the new model,
Yeah.
the newest refresh of a model year.
Right.
And you often don't want to do the last one either, from what I've seen, because they kind of tend to tail off. They're working on the other car. So something in the middle. Toyota seems to refresh like every 8 to 10 years or so. So it
Okay.
gives you a wide range
Yeah.
in the middle. Yeah, I don't think you can really go too wrong with a Toyota typical sedan
Uh-huh.
if you had to choose. And then Lexus is still like the most reliable car brand. That's the luxury brand also owned by Toyota, the most reliable car company plus,
Yeah.
sort of. They're number one and then usually number two with Toyota.
Okay.
I think that's a very valuable thing.
Yeah.
A depreciating asset should at least be a reliable depreciating asset.
Yeah. Maybe if anything, depreciate slower than some other cars potentially or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, it kind of reminds me of another story of my dad was working with some older folks on some estate planning, and part of the name of the game there is Medicaid planning or long-term care planning. And they're trying to get assets, money, investments, cash out of consideration for Medicaid. Because if you have too much money, Medicaid won't pay for your long-term care, and you can't just get rid of it because they look back 5 years to see what your net worth was or what you had. But anyway, so he said you can put money into cars, which obviously depreciate, but he would look around for doing research on cars that depreciated the least, where they could kind of park money for these people and get it out of consideration. And at the time, what did they buy? It was like a BMW X5 or something like that was holding its value the best. And so there's other ways that that's useful. But all right, well, I think that's hopefully helpful on buying a car. And whether you're listening to this 5 years from today's podcast or 5 days from it, it might be in a different car buying, selling environment, but there's some good rules of thumb for you to remember regardless. And then some just little nuances about the time that we're in this year. Are we headed towards a recession? Will these prices be dropping soon? Where's gas prices going? All these things. Perhaps while you're listening to this episode, you already know the answers to these questions that I'm asking about the future. But either way, the financial advice that we have here is always solid, and we're always trying to prepare for whatever the future may hold, planning all contingencies and pivot when we need to. So if you've got any further questions on that, you know how to get a hold of us. Go to financialmd.com. You'll find all the free resources there. You'll find our financial planning app designed for residents. You'll find the links to our YouTube, to our TikTok, our Instagram. We're trying to get videos out at least once a week. So TikTok, Instagram are going to be the best place to catch those videos and subscribe and follow those. But you'll see this video on YouTube and Facebook. And please not only subscribe to this podcast if you haven't yet, I'm assuming you have. I never know why they always ask at the end of each podcast I listen to, you need to subscribe to this podcast. I'm like, I'm listening to it. But what's big is two things. Please share and please leave a review. If you want this info to get out to other doctors, if you feel like it's good, if you've benefited from Financial MD at all, get the word out. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us a message. As always, Dr. Smith, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure to hang.
Yep. Great talking with you, John.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
We'll see you guys next time.